Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Look, we need to talk about that very specific, very heavy kind of guilt. You know the exact feeling I'm talking about. You're a student, you're staring down this massive workload with 5 huge assignments due. You've got the time, your laptop's charged, and nothing is physically stopping you. But instead of typing a single word, you just spent 3 hours doom scrolling, organizing your perfectly clean desk, or literally just staring at the wall. And the entire time, that crushing guilt is just sitting right there on your chest.
I have the textbook open, why can't I just read it? Sound familiar? If you've ever had this toxic internal monologue playing on a loop, I want to just pause and empathize with you for a second, because it is so incredibly common. You probably called yourself lazy today, right? You told yourself you just lack discipline. But we really need to set the record straight. Your inability to just start that study session is absolutely not a character flaw. Actually, what if you aren't lazy at all, but just biologically confused? This is the whole core premise we're unpacking today. You are not broken. Instead, your brain is essentially running a 300,000-year-old survival program. It's this ancient automatic biological software that mistakenly looks at a heavy course load and modern academic effort and interprets it as literal physical danger. Pretty wild, right? So to beat this, we've got to understand the science.
It all comes down to the principle of least effort. See, for hundreds of thousands of years, conserving energy literally meant survival for our ancestors. You couldn't just tap an app and have food delivered to your cave. Every single calorie you burned was a massive risk. Because of that, your brain evolved this incredibly powerful default state to do the absolute bare minimum required to stay alive. So when you're avoiding that huge research paper, your brain isn't being lazy. It is being magnificently efficient at avoiding a task with an uncertain, distant payoff.
Think about it from the perspective of your ancient brain. Burning precious calories for a degree that's still 3 years away, or a final exam that isn't happening for another 3 months, that makes zero survival sense. Your brain calculates the effort, looks around for an immediate payoff, sees absolutely nothing, and shuts your motivation down to keep you safe on the couch. Biologically speaking, it simply cannot distinguish between chasing a distant meal that might not exist and grinding toward a distant academic milestone. Now, this totally flips the script on how we think about dopamine. We've all been sold this idea that dopamine is the pleasure chemical, right? The reward you get at the very end. But Dr. Robert Sapolsky's research out of Stanford reveals something fascinating. Dopamine is actually the effort and anticipation chemical. It is the chemical of wanting something, not the chemical of having it. To picture this, let's look at this famous primate experiment. The setup is simple. A light turns on, there's a 10-second wait, and then boom, food arrives. Initially, the monkeys got a huge dopamine spike right when the food showed up. Makes sense. But as they learned the pattern, that spike actually shifted. The dopamine started spiking the exact moment the light turned on. The chemical reward was entirely wrapped up in the chase and the anticipation, not the actual arrival of the food. We are fundamentally wired to pursue a signal. So when your brain runs the math on energy versus reward today, social media is an absolute goldmine. It's instant, guaranteed, totally effortless dopamine with every single notification and reel. Studying, on the other hand, that offers delayed, uncertain, and incredibly effortful dopamine. When your brain compares the two, of course it's going to pick the effortless scroll over the delayed gratification of finishing a 10-page essay. It's literally just doing exactly what it was built to do.
But unfortunately, it gets worse. Enter our real antagonist for this explainer, the amygdala. This little structure is your brain's ancient threat detection center. Have you ever felt that creeping, subtle sense of dread when you just glance at a class syllabus? Well, that is your amygdala triggering a literal fight or flight avoidance response. To your brain, there is zero difference between a physical predator stalking you in the jungle and the emotional threat of an overwhelming 20-page syllabus. It's all just a threat.
And here is where it gets crazy. Researchers at the University of Chicago actually proved that the anxiety of anticipating a difficult task is almost always significantly worse than the actual experience of just doing it. When you're staring down a huge workload, the dread of starting is the real torture. But your amygdala doesn't know that. It just knows it feels threatened. And the kicker? Every single time you procrastinate, you're actually training your amygdala to run away from that task even faster the next time. Avoidance literally becomes a biological habit. Okay, so we know the problem. We're up against an incredibly stubborn, ancient system. But we are not powerless here. Let's run through 5 science-backed biological study fixes to override this programming without just relying on willpower. The 2-minute rule, dopamine stacking, implementation intentions, environment design, and the ultradian rhythm. Let's kick things off with fix number 1, the 2-minute rule, a brilliant concept popularized by productivity expert David Allen. When a massive workload feels like a looming threat, you have to basically sneak past your own amygdala. How? You tell yourself you're only going to open the document and write one single sentence. That is it. You make the barrier to entry microscopically small. Your amygdala simply can't justify a full-blown threat response for just 2 minutes of typing, so it stands down. And the secret here is that once you start, 90% of the time, you just keep going.
Next up is Fix 2, dopamine stacking, or temptation bundling. This is a genius concept from Dr. Catherine Milkman over at Wharton. Look, if studying lacks immediate dopamine, we just have to artificially attach some to it. The trick is pairing a highly rewarding activity you really want to do exclusively with the demanding study task you need to do. So maybe you only let yourself listen to your absolute favorite podcast while you're organizing your study notes. If you stick to this, over time, that dopamine reward actually transfers neurologically right over to the hard task.
Moving on to fix 3, and this one is an absolute game changer. Implementation intentions. NYU psychologist Peter Gollwitzer figured out this highly effective formula. It goes exactly like this. I will do this specific action at this specific time in this specific place. See, a vague goal like, oh, I'll study tomorrow, just completely overwhelms your prefrontal cortex. But this targeted sentence creates an automatic if-then neural pathway in your brain. It completely removes the need to make a decision in the moment.
And why is that one specific sentence so crucial? Because students who actually use this exact structure for their study plans are 2 to 3 times more likely to follow through compared to the ones who just use vague intentions. That's a massive difference. It's actually one of the most replicated findings in all of behavioral psychology. Just filling in those blanks literally doubles or triples your chances of crushing those heavy assignments.
All right, fix number 4, environment design. Stanford psychologist B.J. Fogg teaches us something really liberating. Relying on pure discipline is basically a myth. The students who effectively manage massive workloads aren't superhumanly disciplined. They just design an environment that makes laziness deeply, deeply inconvenient. They engineer their surroundings to totally bypass the need for willpower. You just make the good study behaviors effortless, and the bad procrastination habits incredibly annoying to pull off.
Let's run through some rapid-fire real-world examples. Leave your phone in a completely different room. Keep your textbooks open and highly visible on your desk. Take those highly distracting apps and bury them in folders on the 3rd page of your home screen. Keep healthy study snacks right at eye level. Seriously, adding even a tiny 30-second physical friction point to reach your phone is usually more than enough to break the impulse to start scrolling. Make the right choice the absolute easiest choice. And finally, fix 5, the ultradian work rhythm. This is going to take so much pressure off you. Your brain is biologically incapable of maintaining deep focus for more than about 90 minutes at a time. It's just how our natural rhythm works. When you're totally drowning in coursework, it feels like a crime to stop. But after 90 minutes, taking a break isn't a lack of discipline. Your brain is literally demanding mandatory maintenance. So you work intensely for 90 minutes, and then you take 20 minutes of genuine step away from the screen rest. This right here is the ultimate perspective shift. Elite performers work with their biology, not against it. 3 to 4.5 hours of really high-quality, ultradian-synced, focused work produces vastly more output than an 8-hour, guilt-fueled cram session at the library where you're half distracted the whole time. You've got to stop trying to force these impossible marathon study sessions. When you work with your biology, you will get so much more done in half the time. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want this to sink in. You are not lazy. You are actively trying to override ancient biology with modern intention. To the student out there feeling completely crushed by their workload right now, fighting this ancient software every single day is a genuinely extraordinary act of effort. Please give yourself some grace. And remember, the exact same brain that avoids work can completely rewire its habits in just 21 to 66 days. So, I'm going to leave you with a bit of a provocative challenge. Which of these 5 biological fixes are you going to implement in your very next study session? Are you going to use the 2-minute rule to sneak past your amygdala? Are you going to try dopamine stocking with your favorite podcast? You've got the science now. You are fully capable of outsmarting your own biology tonight. Pick just one and go take your power back.